taking your pictures out?
Yeah, I'm just running a little bit of leader tape here and doing a trial. How come everybody became quiet when I said I'm doing a trial?
We're watching you.
Because you were talking.
Okay, I'm Tom Van Zoeren, and it's August 1st, 1996, and I'm at my Aunt Eve's house, Eve Newman, with my dad, Jay Van Zoeren, and Aunt Ellen Warner. And we're going to go through some old pictures here and identify them and talk about them. And we're all set on this first one. Is about the only one that we have here of the Shermer family. And Ellen's ready to tell us about this one. Go ahead, Ellen.
Okay, this is Dora Shermer Van Zoren's family. That's Grandpa Shermer.
Okay, now, just a second, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in a little closer. Okay, go ahead and point to one. Let me get over to it. Go ahead.
That's Grandpa Shermer.
Okay, there's Grandpa Shermer. Okay.
That's Grandma Shermer.
Okay, I got to find her now. Okay.
That's Aunt Elsie.
So this would be their daughter?
Yes.
Okay, in other words, my grandma's sister?
Right.
Okay.
And Aunt Tony.
Mm-hmm.
She was the baby of the family.
Mm-hmm.
Aunt Anna.
Yes, we do. Okay.
And that's
Aunt Anna that's still alive?
right. She's the only one that's alive, and she's 94
Mm-hmm.
years old.
How would she fit in among the children, the oldest?
She was next to Tony was the youngest, then was Aunt Elsie, then was Aunt Anna.
Okay.
Now the next one in line was Uncle Andrew.
Okay. You're going from youngest to oldest? in other
Yes,
words?
right.
Okay.
And then next was my mother, Dora.
Mhm.
And next was Aunt Tilly. She's Nettie's mother.
Mhm.
And Uncle Case, who was the oldest.
Mhm.
And he died, he had a stroke, and he died about 1936, in that range.
Mhm. Okay. Anything else you want to tell about this picture?
Not really, they all look very serious.
Yeah, like most of these
Nothing
old
to
pictures.
smile about.
Yeah, or at least they're not going to do it at this time. Okay. Okay, Ellen, who do we have here?
Now we're getting to the Van Zoren ancestors.
Okay.
This is my grandpa's father, Garrett Jacob.
Your
Vans-
grandpa, in other words.
My great grandpa.
All on the male side.
Right.
Your father's father's
Right.
father.
Right.
And what did you say the name was?
Garrett Jacob
Okay.
Van Zoren.
Okay.
And
Before we go on,
Okay.
now, he was a farmer or what?
I'm sure he was. He
Okay.
lived in Friesland
Uh-huh.
on the farm where Uncle Maureen Van Zoren
Mm-hmm.
lived, which was east, maybe a quarter of a mile, half a mile, east of Friesland Corner.
Mhm.
That was a settlement where the Van Zoren settled when they came. Yeah, when they came from the Netherlands.
Uh-huh. That was the original one.
Mhm.
And he would have been, let's see what, he didn't come over now, did he?
Yes, he did.
Yeah, I
He's
think-
as a boy.
Yeah.
He's the one that came as about a 14-year-old or something
Right.
like that. Does anybody know anything else about him? Eve? Or anybody have anything about?
Our great-grandma?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Uh-huh.
Garrett Young.
He was a farmer, you figure?
Yes,
Mhm.
and he's the one who married Mrs. Albert's daughter.
Mhm.
Let's move on over to her. Okay.
And that was his wife, it's our great-grandmother, Fanny Elbers
Mm-hmm.
Van Zorn.
Okay, so this would be the daughter of the clockmaker that we're going to see a clock by this evening?
Well, it was an Elbers,
Okay.
I think. Have you got Jean's letter around?
Yeah.
Well, we can sharpen up on that
Yeah.
later. It gets a little confusing, but we can sort that all out.
She was the daughter of Fanny, is that Fanny?
I think so.
Fanny Elbers.
She was the daughter of that clockmaker.
Okay, okay.
You don't remember her at all, do we?
No.
You weren't
No,
born when
no.
she was.
We ought to have the history here.
Garrett Young, born, died.
Oh, okay.
Uh-huh.
Garrett, oh, that was Garrett, okay. That's the one that Jan did,
Yeah,
yeah.
but if you wanted the dates of his,
You want that?
Okay, why don't you go ahead and tell it?
I don't know
Move it
what
back
hers
a
were.
little.
Garrett,
Okay, good.
Garrett Jan Van Zorn was
Mhm.
born June 1, 1830.
Okay,
He died May 8, 1918. So he lived to be quite a ripe old age for that day and age.
here, Fanny Albert's born.
Okay, okay. And Fanny Elbers, his wife, was born December 18, 1827,
okay.
and she died September 23, 1894.
Okay, good. Okay, now we've got Aunt Eve up to bat, and where is this shot?
This is in Zealand by Mart and Sini Verheeg's home.
Okay, and who are they? I mean, who are Mark and C?
Aunt Sini was our Grandpa Van Zorn's sister.
Okay,
Now that is Jenny Van Zorn.
okay, now pause just a moment, and I'm gonna come in a little closer as you go through these. Okay, now, once more, what you just told.
The whole thing.
Jenny Van Zorn, you said,
Okay,
that would be the individual.
that's
Uh-huh.
Jenny Van Zorn.
And who's she?
Jenny Van Zorn was Jenny Rankins and Hattie Rankins were sisters.
Uh-huh.
Jenny Van Zorn married Maureen Van Zorn.
Uh-huh.
Hattie Van Zorn married our grandpa,
Okay.
J.G.J. Van Zorn.
Okay.
And that's Aunt Kella, Helsinga.
Okay.
Unknown. That's our Grandma Hattie. Don't know that one. This must be Martin Verheeg. And either one of these two was his wife, Ancini.
Okay.
And this is our great grandpa Van Zorn. And that's our grandpa.
Okay, hang on a minute, I'm gonna see if I can get a little closer on these. Oh, I guess I'm all the way in. Okay, go ahead.
And I don't know any of the children. They probably some are Cini and Mark Verheeg's children.
Uh-huh. So that's all the people you know in this one?
Mhm.
And a minute ago, when you were looking at this, you identified it by one of the windows in the house,
Yeah.
was it?
That's the house still is on Central Avenue, right
Uh-huh.
off from Church Street. That's
What, is that kind of a
where,
diamond-shaped window, or is that just a funny angle there?
that's going upstairs.
Uh-huh,
Came in the front door here and you went upstairs and
Mhm.
that window's there.
uh-huh. The window looks almost like it's diamond shaped, or
Yeah.
is that just the way
Yeah,
we're
it
looking
really
at it?
is.
Oh,
It
okay,
is.
so that's how you recognize that.
Mhm.
Okay. Did you used to go to this house to visit much?
Not really,
No.
no.
Okay.
After a while, when Grandma Van Zorn moved to Zealand, after Grandpa died, then she had an apartment upstairs here.
Oh,
And then Ancini and her sister Seal,
stopped it accidentally for a minute, but okay, you were saying who lived downstairs?
Ancini,
Uh-huh,
Verheeg, and her daughter Cecilia lived
Okay.
downstairs.
okay. Anything else about this place or any of these people that springs to mind?
No,
at this
not-
point?
no.
Okay, you can go on. Okay, now it's my dad Jay gonna tell us about this. What is this, Dad?
This is the farmer Marinus Van Zoeren, who was one of the sons of Gerrit Jan Van Zoeren, and he was the one that took over the original family homestead. And this is silo filling time, which is when the corn is brought in from the field and it's fed into this machine, which chops it up and then blasts it up through that long pipe.
Okay, let's
to-
slow down a minute. Could you take the pointer? And where's the machine?
Well, the machine is not very visible because it's kind of
This
hidden
over
here.
here?
Well, that's the thing that the power for the machine. That's the old steam engine.
Okay, that's a steam engine.
Right, and there would have been a pulley here and then a long belt which ran to another pulley on the actual corn cutter,
Which is back there somewhere.
which is back of this, so you can't see it very well.
Okay.
And the corn goes in, the corn stalks go in on a conveyor belt, and they get chopped up and then blown up through this long pipe into the silo. These,
Okay.
of course, are the horses and the
Now, just a minute.
wagons.
Wait. I'm zoomed in here. Okay, go ahead.
This would be the horses and their wagons
Uh-huh.
with the farmers who go out to the field and gather the corn stalks to feed the silage machine.
Oh, yeah. Now, what about the top of that silo? It's got kind of a toothed sort of a shape.
I don't know what that is. I
Okay.
don't know.
Anything else about this
No, I think
particularly?
you got it.
Okay.
All right.
Okay, what do we have here, Dad?
This is the farm of JGJ, Jacob Gerrit John Van Zoeren.
Which is who in relation to you again?
Well, it'd be my grandfather. It
Okay.
would be your Thomas's great-grandfather.
Right.
So this is the barn, which consisted of three parts. This was the larger of the horse barn with hay mows, so on and so forth. This would have been the cow barn, which also had hay mows in, and in between was a large shed connecting the two barns. Here's the windmill. At a later date, there was built in this spot about here a garage for Grandpa's Oldsmobile, and then the two houses, Grandpa's house and George Van Zoren's house, over to the left side of the picture. On the picture, we have Grandpa Van Zoeren, JGJ Van Zoeren, with a team of horses in front of a wagon. We have,
Okay, just a second, we're getting here on him.
that's JGJ Van Zoeren.
All right.
Next in the buggy is Aunt Calla, which would have been George's sister. She would have been the oldest girl in JGJ Van Zoren's family, the oldest daughter. And over on the far right is George Van Zoeren, who would have been my father, your grandfather, with the horse.
Who's the horse?
Don't know the horse, probably Dan.
Okay.
Was that the horse's name, Dan?
Yeah, I think so. That was a Dan at least.
Yeah.
Vadan, one of many. Okay.
This is the farmhouse on the farm of Jacob Gerrit John Van Zoeren, my grandfather, Tom's great-grandfather. This is Gramps Van Zoeren, and this is Elizabeth Van Zoeren, who was his grandpa's second wife.
Mhm.
Off to the back would have been the barns. Over to the left would have been the farmhouse of George Van Zoeren, George and Dora Van Zoeren.
Mhm. Was that their dog there by him?
Yeah, I don't know the dog's name. Maybe that was Jip. Wasn't there a dog named Jip?
It isn't Scotty, yeah.
No, it isn't Scotty. No,
Oh, I don't know. They had Teddy.
Teddy? It's either Teddy or Jip.
Okay.
I think Jip was the
Did they use that front porch much?
Oh, was
What was that?
I don't recall anybody ever sitting on that front porch.
Hmm.
But there's a couch here.
Side porch.
Yeah, yeah. There's another porch around the back of the house and to the right side, which was the most used porch.
Okay, Eve, what do we have here?
This is the Riesland School.
Uh-huh.
there were 2 rooms, and this is what we call the big room, that had the classes from 5 through 8. And these were double desks. 2 people sat at the desk, and there's an inkwell in between.
Mhm.
There's an inkwell, and there's an inkwell.
Oh, yeah.
And out in front was the blackboard.
Uh-huh.
That's the teacher.
Okay.
And
Do you
these
know-
were big double doors that opened up into what we call the small room, which held kindergarten through 4th grade.
Uh-huh.
But I don't know the year, and I don't know the teacher or anybody on it.
Okay, but that's generally the layout of the school.
Hmm.
It's like some pretty nice woodwork there on that big double door.
I bet it is too.
It's been a fairly special building in the community, huh? Okay. Okay, Eve, where are we now?
This is the same school, the Friesland School, from the front.
Mhm.
This is the teacher from the upper grade, John Nyan House. And that is the teacher from the smaller grade, Lillian Shermer. I think the only 2 people on here that are from our family this is Leon Manzord.
Okay, could you keep your pointer on him a minute? I'll find you. I'm lost. Here we go. Okay.
That's Leon Van
Oh,
Zorn.
yeah.
Is this the
And that's
binder,
Eva Van
or
Zorn.
is this by the
Right there?
That's it.
Doesn't look big enough for
Now,
the binder,
I'm
does it?
trying to think of the year.
Uh-huh.
Yeah,
Okay, you're maybe about 10 years old or so, do you think?
Well, that's what I wondered if this were,
No,
it went around like that.
I don't think I was more than about
Yeah.
7 or 8
Yeah,
because
there's the thing with the bundle cell on it.
Yeah.
I must have been about in the 2nd grade, I would think.
Because usually it
Mhm.
3 horses
Okay.
on the binder, this is only
Really?
2. Yeah.
I was born in 1916. I'm talking to myself now.
That's okay, go ahead. I'm just gonna scan over here and get a look at some of your pals.
That's a nice picture of them. Yeah. But man, I first look, I thought, Flander? No, that can't be. It's Coleman.
You don't recognize any of your friends in here, do you?
Oh, lots of them.
Oh, yeah? Who are some of your better friends?
This was my best friend,
What's her name?
Nelva DeYoung.
Did she live nearby?
She lived, her dad owned the Friesland store.
Oh,
And this was her brother, Kenny.
now would you go into Friesland to play with her?
Yes, well, at school,
You'd play at school.
yeah.
You wouldn't be able
You
to.
didn't go and stay overnight at all?
Yeah, we used to stay overnight. She'd come to our house overnight and I'd go to her
I
house.
used to do with Florence.
This is Ellen's best friend, Florence DeYoung. But we can't find Ellen on the picture,
You go to school that
Let's
day.
see Florence once more.
that one.
Okay. Where did she live?
At the Friesland store too.
Oh,
They're the same family, Florence
okay.
DeYoung.
Okay.
And this was another one in that family, Ethel DeYoung.
Uh-huh.
This was Lois Weingarten. She lived on the way to school. We always walked with her.
Walked to and from
Walked
school
to
with
and-
her?
Yeah.
Hmm? What would you do when you would stay overnight with your friend? Would you guys have certain games that you'd play, or
Bible cards.
what was that? Once more?
Bible cards.
Oh, but hey, boy, you had some good times, didn't you? Okay. Anything else, or pretty much just Bible cards?
I can't think of any other, what games we did play there. No.
Help her, Carol, or Ellen.
I'm trying to remember too. We used to play outside a lot of times
Yeah.
when I'd go there.
Well, didn't you play dominoes and marbles? No?
No, I don't think so. I think
Bunco?
we used to play maybe
Flinch?
Flinch. We played cards of some kind around the dining room table sometimes. I did when I was there with Florence.
Did you?
Pedro.
Mhm.
No, 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 no.
What's Pedro?
Those are those awful gambling cards.
You didn't do that, huh?
No.
Some people you do it? Some people in the area?
I have a sneaking suspicion when my dad was away from home, he might have played.
Oh, I do too.
Yeah.
Boy, they played it by Uncle, or by Grandpa Shermer's house.
Well,
They
you did a lot of
they
things with
played-
Grandpa
yeah,
Shivers.
they played setback and different kinds of card games there, yeah. But
What-
the Van Zorns were very straight-laced.
Holy.
Only when he'd go over to those Shermers, then
Yeah,
he'd,
but the funny
Yeah.
part of it was, all the Shermers were more lax except Mother, and she
Yeah.
was very strict, like the Van Zorns were.
okay. That's why
How
she
they got
hitched up
that
with,
way, living with him.
huh?
Well, but Dad was just the opposite. Dad was much more liberal. I don't know, it was a mix-up.
Would they actually gamble money, you think?
Oh, I don't think so.
Just-
I don't think they did. I don't
It's just
know,
a
they
game.
played in the kitchen, but they used to have an awful good time playing cards there. All the men and Tony, the youngest daughter, Tony, she was out in the kitchen with the guys playing cards,
Oh,
and she
yeah?
was home.
She'd fit in with them and what they were doing, huh?
She went to nurses training and she got away from home, but Tony was a different kettle of fish.
Anything else about her?
This is all being recorded.
Oh, is this being recorded?
Sure. What do you think I'm trying to prod you along for? Tell us more about Tony.
Yeah, but she was.
She smoked.
Oh, yeah?
She's
Oh,
from
boy,
the
now we're
other
getting the
side.
good stuff.
She's from the other side of the family. She
She
wasn't
was
from
a
the Van
Shermer.
Zorn.
She was Mother's
Oh,
sister,
well, that
Tony.
explains it, right?
Yeah. She was not a Van Zorn.
Anything else awful she did besides smoke and gamble?
We don't know. We might surmise, but we don't know.
Sometimes those surmises can be the best part. Okay. Okay, Eve,
This was
what
after
do we
all
have
that
here?
recovery
This
from
is,
the house.
Right, and you know.
One of the
that
oldest
one
pictures
picture
that we have
of the
of
house,
our dad,
and
George Van
it
Zorn's
was a big
family.
one
Mm.
before it was remodeled.
This is
Oh,
his,
yeah.
And it had
Uncle
blue
John
shutters
Van
on it.
Zorn,
Yes, yeah, well, Tom just did
Okay, in
that.
other words,
yeah,
your
and
dad's
Dad's
brother.
brother.
He said, "You
This is Aunt
really
Calla
know
Van
this
Zorn,
house."
Elzinga,
Right,
his oldest
right.
sister.
See,
This
the
is
house was
Dad,
remodeled
George
when
Van
Grandpa
Zorn.
got married.
This
Go a
is-
little slower here, I'm moving kinda slowly. Okay, now where are you, we appointed last?
This is grandma.
Okay, who's this?
That's
No,
George
that's
Van
it.
Zorn, our dad.
Okay,
And that's his sister Fanny Van Zorn.
okay.
Oh, that's insane.
So that's all the kids in the family?
No, but that was
Yeah,
what they had
sure
at
it
that
is.
time.
Okay.
That was before he
Oh,
and Grandpa
yeah.
were married, and Grandma were married. Heating system.
Uh-huh.
Okay, Eve?
This is the family picture of Dad's family. This is Grandpa Van Zorn, JGJ.
Mm-hmm.
This is the youngest girl, Aunt Maddie Osterhaven,
This was his sister.
Dad's sister.
Mhm.
This was Dad's mother, Hattie Rankins Van Zorn.
Okay.
This is our dad, George Van Zorn, with his middle part.
Mhm.
This is Aunt
Kind of
Calla.
stylish at the time?
He always wore a middle part
Mhm.
and a toe tie. And
A
a
bow tie.
stiff, he doesn't have a bow tie on this one though.
Oh, that's a,
But they have those
well, that's kinda
stiff,
young.
stiff collars on their shirts. See, Uncle John has those too, Grandpa.
Mm-hmm.
This is Aunt Calla, his dad's sister, the oldest girl, Calla Elzinga. And this is his oldest brother, John Van Zorn. And this is Aunt Fanny. She married Henry Mings. That's his sister.
Okay, Eve, what do we have now?
This is Grandpa Van Zorn, JGJ, with his second wife, Elizabeth Lietzma Van Zorn. They're sitting on their side porch. That's where they practically lived when they were outside.
Mhm.
Grandpa in his rocking chair, and Grandma had her plants. This big window was the first picture window, I think,
Mhm.
that we would know about.
Mhm.
It was into their kitchen. The kitchen was right beyond this. The table sat right in front of it so that Grandpa and Grandma could sit and look right out of that big window.
Oh. And was that picture window installed?
When he
Yeah.
remodeled the house. He
when did-
remodeled that house when he married this for the second time.
Okay, and that was, you say, actually before you were even
That'd
born?
been about 1915, I think they were married.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they were married in about 1915.
When you say he remodeled the house, you mean he had a carpenter do it, or would he have done some of that type of work
Oh, no.
himself?
Oh, no. Grandpa wasn't handy.
I think he would have had someone do it.
He had central heating put in, and he had a bathroom, running water put in, and
That would have been all at that time.
before he married Grandma.
Mm-hmm. Kind of a way to attract her, you think?
Well, she was from the city. She
Oh.
worked in Grand Rapids, so she was used to those conveniences.
Yeah.
Well, in fact, she had lived in a rather nice home,
Oh,
had she
yeah,
not,
she
Mrs.
kept
Porter's?
house. Yes, they
Yeah.
had lovely, they traveled all over.
Now, what do you mean? Her family had a nice home, or she lived in someone else's?
She was housekeeper for some people in Grand Rapids.
Okay.
Had lots of money.
Uh-huh. And she traveled with them and sort of helped out?
I don't know if she traveled.
I thought you said something about.
Well, they traveled a lot.
Oh, they were people.
And she had a lot of beautiful things that they would bring back from different places, you remember? Whatnots, and
Dishes and things.
dishes and things, you know, they went to Italy and they went, I think, to China, and they did a lot of traveling, and they thought a lot of Grandma.
Yeah, that was probably a pretty good job for,
I would say so.
do you think it was, when he had the idea of hitching up with her that he fixed up the house?
That's dead, that's not
I
Grandma.
suppose so.
Don't you think so?
That's dead.
Sure. Change it.
Okay, we've got our representative of the male species here to tell about this piece of farm equipment. Go ahead.
This is what originally would have been called a reaper, but in later years was called a binder when they figured out how to have twine go around the grain that was being cut. These long fan-like things tipped the grain onto a conveying mover, a belt, which fed over here, and then it went up and over, and then there was kind of a complicated machine which tied them into bundles. They fell down on this rack here and then out on the ground as like that. It would be used to take in the wheat, the oats, and the rye or the barley if there was any, but it was mostly wheat and oats. This would be my father, George Van Zoeren, and this would be his brother-in-law, John Elzinga.
Okay. Now, pardon me, did you say that the grain had been cut before this thing came along, or this cut it and did the rest of it?
This cut the grain and bind it into bundles.
Kind of a miracle machine at its time?
At its time, it was a miracle.
Could you ever understand how it could tie it up and do all that stuff?
No, I didn't. But it did it. It tied good knots. Occasionally, of course, it would fail, and then you'd have a pile of loose straw, loose grain. So you always carried when you went around afterwards, you carried a bunch of twine in your pocket to tie up the ones that the machine failed to tie.
Mm-hmm. Do you remember the time before having this machine when it had to
No.
be done manually?
No, I don't.
Okay.
This is another picture of the binder from a slightly different view. I think this is Grandpa on it, J.G.J. Van Zoeren on the binder. You can see over the top of the horse's back the fans, which knock the grain stalks down onto the binder. Two horses are pulling it. That's a little bit surprising because my recollection is normally it was a three-horse operation, but apparently at this particular time it was being done by just two horses.
Figure it took a lot of power to turn the machine and work the machine.
Yeah, well, first of all, it was a relatively heavy piece of machinery to
Oh, was
begin
it?
with. On top of that, the traction of the machine was turning all of the gears that moved the other things. So yes, that would have been hard work for horses.
But it was always horses, right? It was never oxen or...
No, it was always horses, at least on our farm.
You don't remember any other farms using oxen or anything?
Nope, don't
Just-
remember oxen,
just-
just horses.
Remember tractors among the neighbors?
Well, that's, a few of them were starting to get them at about this time.
Mhm.
But I think that the people who got tractors were not usually pulling binders anymore. They were getting into something called a combine,
Oh, yeah.
which also threshed the grain.
Okay, here we have two pictures that are actually fastened together in a nice frame, but I can't show them both at once, so I'm on this one. Ellen, what do we have here?
That's my dad, and that was before he was married. That was a picture he had taken while he was dating Mother.
Oh, okay.
Um,
Do you have,
I would say he was 27 when he was married, maybe about 26 years old or they dated for 2 years, but I doubt that he gave Mother a picture right away when they started dating.
Not that forward?
No.
Okay.
So I would say he was 25 or 26 or 27 in that range when that was taken.
Do you think that 27 is a relatively old age for a man to get married
I
at
think
that
it was
time?
at that time.
Do you have any idea how that would happen to be particularly?
Well, Dad, when, after he got out of, grade school, he
Yeah.
only went through grade school.
Yeah.
He worked on the farm with Grandpa first for a while, I think. And then he went out west
Oh,
to Iowa.
oh.
And he
Out
worked,
west.
yeah, well, that was
Yeah.
a big trip back
Yeah.
then.
Right.
And worked for some people by the name of Van Heidsma
Oh.
on the farm there.
Not a good Dutch community, huh?
No, I'm sure it was. There are Dutch communities in Iowa.
Yeah.
And I don't know just how long he worked out there, but eventually he did come back to Friesland, and that was when he probably started
Yeah.
dating Mother.
Do you know
So
any-
he was gone for quite a span there. And Mother, of course, was 19 when they were married, so there was
Yeah.
quite an age difference in them.
so
She grew up. She grew up while he was gone.
Uh-huh. She was kind of at a normal age to get married.
Probably in that day and age, right? Because all the girls just went through 8th grade.
Yeah.
Then they probably stayed home and
Yeah.
helped around the house.
Right.
They didn't go out to work like we did. So I would say that 19 was probably
Yeah.
sort of a normal age.
Do you know anything else about that Iowa trip as far as what he would have gone there for? Was it he kind of thought it'd be interesting to go to another part of the country?
I think he just wanted to get away.
Uh-huh.
Grandpa wasn't the easiest person to live with,
Yeah.
my grandpa,
Right, I've heard that.
or to work for.
Uh-huh.
And I think Dad just
Yeah.
wanted to get away, and
Uh-huh.
why he came back, I don't really know.
Uh-huh. And you don't know anything else about how that particular location or family was selected to go work with? If they were related
Must have known
somehow,
some
or-
relatives or something, because there were lots of Van Heidsmans in our area too. And
Oh.
they were probably
Okay.
cousins or
Relatives.
brothers or
Yeah.
relatives of them, I would say.
Yeah.
Now that's just a guess, but
Right.
I think that's probably what it is.
Uh-huh.
Because I remember them coming to visit
Oh.
afterwards.
The
and they
ones
were
that
vi-
he had stayed with?
Yes,
Uh-huh.
and they were visiting relatives,
Oh, okay.
in that
Yeah.
area.
All right.
And then they came to our house and visited.
Oh. Okay, now we're on.
That is Mother,
Your
Dora. And Eve took that picture off an 8th grade graduation picture. Mother didn't have any pictures taken between, the time she graduated from 8th grade and the time she got married.
Oh.
And she wanted a picture of Mother and Dad together,
Oh.
so she had that taken off from the 8th grade. So Mother was about 13 or 14 there, probably.
Kind of makes it look like he picked up a little 13-year-old.
Yeah, right.
Mhm.
But it was the only picture available, so that's why, although she looks older than that, I think in
Yeah.
that day and age,
Mhm.
they tended to look older
Uh-huh.
than they do today.
Uh-huh. Do you think she looks quite a bit like your daughter, Jan? It really
I don't
strikes me
know.
that way.
I know different people have said that. Lots of people have said Jan looks just like Bill, so
Uh-huh.
I don't know. No.
Okay, and who's this handsome couple?
That's my mother and dad, George and Dora Van Zoeren. And that's their wedding picture. They were married March 24, 1915. They were married in Grandpa Van Zoeren, my Grandpa Van Zoren's house.
Were you
That's what,
going
I think so. I thought Mother said that. Yeah, I'm almost sure Mother said that.
You think that was unusual?
Well, it was a much nicer home than the one that Mother and Aunt Calla made Mother's wedding dress. Aunt Calla was Dad's sister.
Mm-hmm.
So Mother was very nervous about that whole thing. Somehow she thought the Van Zorns were a little more, what word do I want?
Uppity.
Uppity, high up. They thought
Uh-huh.
they thought a little more of themselves maybe than some of the other people, and she didn't feel quite as comfortable around them, I don't think.
Oh.
But I'm almost sure she told me that they were married in
Maybe.
Grandpa's
I don't know.
house.
Could be.
Most people would be married in the church, right?
No, they
Not in
weren't so
those
much
days.
in those days.
But usually they
No.
were married in the bride's home.
Yeah.
It's funny, I thought it would have been church. Okay.
I don't think they had church weddings in that
I
day.
don't think so either.
It came later.
Anything else either of you has to say about this? And them at that time? Okay. Now we're going.
Okay, this is the farm in Friesland where my grandpa and grandma lived. They lived in the big house, we called it.
Mhm.
And grandpa had this house moved, didn't he, Eve?
Yes.
That house was moved onto the farm for my mother and dad.
Hmm.
And that's where we lived all the years that we lived at home in Friesland, in this house. And that was always a little house.
Uh-huh.
And that's not there anymore. When the farm was finally sold, the people that bought the farm remodeled the big house again, and the smaller home was, I guess, torn down.
Hmm.
It's not there. Of course, that's the barn and that's the garage.
You gotta hang on,
Oh.
because I'm all zoomed in
Oh,
over on the other
okay.
side. Okay.
There's part of the barn and there's the garage where Grandpa kept his car. Our car was in the barn
Oh, I see.
when Dad finally got one.
Uh-huh.
Under the tree,
Okay.
that's Lee,
Mhm.
that's Eve, and the thing is torn. I suppose that's probably me in the middle? Probably,
I guess so.
yeah.
Mhm.
But they tore me up.
Okay. Do you have any idea where the house came from that was moved?
No, I don't. I don't know where it came from. Couldn't have been too far away though, because in
Yeah.
that day and age, moving a house was
Boy, I guess.
quite an ordeal.
Yeah. You never heard anything about that process,
Mm-mm.
did you?
No, it had to be done with teams of horses, I would think.
Yeah. And that was done, you say, right around the time that they got
Well,
married?
Mother and Dad didn't live in that house at the time they got married. That was moved in a little later, wasn't it, Eve?
Yeah, but not too much later.
No,
Okay.
because they lived in the house that Henry and Minnie Winger lived in, didn't
Yeah, but before that, they lived
they? In the swamp where,
where Dad worked in
Where's
the
the-
swamp. So and I was not even born in that house, and I was born in 1916. I was born in Henry Wingarden's
Okay.
house.
So it was after 1916.
So first, when they got married, they rented a room or something
A
from
house.
the whole house?
Yeah.
from
well, he
Henry
worked on the
Winger?
celery farm, didn't he?
Yeah, first he worked. I
Your
don't
dad
think They
did?
didn't live there very long.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't live there very long.
Mm-hmm. And
And then
Grandpa, your dad worked on the celery farm,
Yeah.
Yeah.
you're saying?
Mhm.
Okay. And then you said they lived in a swamp?
Well,
Well-
that was a celery farm, is swampland.
Uh-huh.
That's where they grow celery.
Yeah. So when you say you just lived in a house on a celery farm?
Yeah.
South of Zealand, sort of.
Okay.
And then Dad started working for Grandpa on the farm, and he moved about a quarter of a mile from this place until this house was fixed up.
Mhm.
And that would have been after 1916, because I was not born here.
Uh-huh. You know what kind of trees those are?
One
Do
of
you
this,
recall?
yeah.
These are cherry.
And this, wasn't this a pear tree? A Bartlett pear tree? There
Yeah.
was a Bartlett pear tree, I know,
Oh.
in the front yard.
Uh-huh, and these
Yeah.
are sweet cherry.
Yeah,
Oh, those are big cherry trees.
Yeah. Well, they were not the big,
Oh.
not the big black
Like a wild
ones.
black
They were,
cherry?
they were the red sour cherries.
Oh, okay.
no,
Were
white,
they?
white sweet
Oh,
ones.
why they
Oh,
white
really?
sweet?
White sweet.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
The red cherry was over this way, you can't see it.
Okay.
Did
Red
you
That
get,
was a
sour cherry.
small, that was a small tree.
Uh-huh.
That might be the branches of it right there.
yeah. Did you get decent food off those trees?
Yeah, but those sweet cherries, they were nice to eat just
Mhm.
off your hand, but they did not can.
Oh.
There was
They
no-
weren't good for pie.
Yeah,
No.
right.
And we did can them, but they didn't have much flavor.
Mm-hmm.
There was a big apple orchard on the farm too,
Uh-huh.
but that was back,
On this
yeah,
back of our house,
yeah.
on the side of our house.
Well, that was the old orchard,
Yeah.
But then there was a newer orchard
Way-
that was back, the farm, here was a barn and a chicken coop, and then beyond that was a newer orchard where there were a lot of Jonathan and a lot of different kinds of apples, Spy.
Do you think those had been planted by your grandfather?
I think so.
Probably.
Mhm.
Did he really work the orchard much at the time you were around, as far as, or have somebody, you know, spraying or pruning or any of that sort of thing?
They did that themselves.
Who did?
Dad.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Dad did everything.
Yeah,
Grandpa supervised.
right. So, but the orchard was maintained and.
Oh,
you
for
got
quite a
some
few
pretty good-
years, yeah, it was really
Oh,
quite
yeah.
a productive orchard.
Yeah.
Had transparent apples, those were the first ones I remember. Boy, did that make good applesauce
Oh,
and
yeah.
good
Kind of a tart
pie.
one?
Yeah, very tart. And it was an real early apple. Tree we had. And your
I just
dad.
cut you off, you say there was
Oh,
one kind of
okay.
apple tree.
There was
Okay,
one
go
kind of an
ahead.
apple tree that we had, that your dad liked so well, and he planted one at your house at Rock Spring.
Oh,
What
the
kind
one
was that?
that grew up against the house?
Yeah,
You
I
had
think
it
so.
trained up against the house? I think that was a yellow.
Golden grime, was it?
Something like that, a yellow golden type of
Yeah,
apple.
I think so. I know he got one like one that we had on the farm. I remember that.
Uh-huh.
Okay,
Okay, what's this little snapshot?
okay. This is Leon, who was our uncle.
Mm-hmm.
He was a step brother of Dad's. When Grandpa remarried,
Mm-hmm.
why, Leon came along, and he was about 6 months older than Eve.
Mm-hmm.
Right, Eve?
Yeah, from June to
Hmm?
February.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And this is Eve, when she was young, and this was me, and that was in the front yard on the farm.
Mm-hmm. Playing with your wagon.
Games we would play.
Yeah.
Leon's wagon.
Yeah, Leon's wagon.
Liam was kind of funny having him as an uncle who was almost your identical age,
We
huh?
never called him uncle. He was always Lee.
Uh-huh.
Never. Leon when he was younger, and then Lee. Yeah, we never.
Leah and I started kindergarten together, and we ended up in high school together.
Uh-huh.
I think Grandma held him back especially, didn't she? So
To wait
he
for
would
me.
go
Yeah.
to school with you.
Oh, really? Okay, we're on the air.
Okay. That's Eve and I. We had our picture taken at the studio, McDermott's studio in Zealand.
Oh, there was an actual
Oh,
photography
yes.
studio in
Oh,
Zealand. at
yes,
that
he was
time.
there for years and years and years. I think we had our graduation pictures taken there. So he was around for a long time. I don't know just what age we were here. Do you, Eve? I know Mother made our dresses,
Oh,
which are
Well,
identical.
And Jay must have been a baby, so.
Okay, and I'm 5 years older than Jay.
mhm.
So I had to be about 6 and a half there.
Mhm.
And you're about 3.5 years older than I am, so
Mhm.
you were close to 10 probably, 9 or 10.
Couple of pretty little girls.
And Elsie
Yeah.
curled our hair.
Yes, and Elsie was the the beauty operator in the family. That was Mother's sister, Aunt Elsie. Every special occasion, she'd come, and she had to put the old curling iron in the fire, in the kerosene stove, and get it hot, and then do our hair. The good old days.
You worked hard for your beauty, huh?
Yeah, I tell you. But nobody could do it like Aunt Elsie.
Huh.
If we were on a Children's Day program in church or in school, like Christmas program in church or school, Aunt Elsie always came and did our hair, didn't she?
Yeah.
Did she have a family of her own?
Finally, she got married and had a daughter, Phyllis.
Uh-huh. She found time for being everybody's
Well,
beauty,
she was single for quite a while when we were growing up.
I see. So
She
it was
worked
at
in
that
a
time.
dress shop in Zealand.
Now, you mentioned the dresses there were made by your mother.
Mother,
She,
oh, mother.
she did a lot of sewing,
Oh,
didn't
Mother
she?
made all our clothes, and she made them for her sisters, and Mother was sitting at that sewing machine. When she wasn't doing anything else, she was sitting at the sewing machine. She also made many clothes out of old hand-me-down clothes.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah.
That
Most
must have
of 'em
been.
were.
Most of them were. We'd get a new cotton dress in the spring. She'd say, you can go to the store and pick out new cotton for each of you, but the rest of them was hand-me-downs that she'd make over.
That would be harder even, wouldn't
Oh, rip them all apart, no patterns, you know, you just had to cut them. I don't know how she did it. I can sew, but I couldn't do that.
it? Not like that, huh?
Uh-uh.
Do you think that was something she enjoyed, or she did because it's just what you did? To get-
Well, we'd have gone around in a barrel. Otherwise,
I guess that answers my question.
I think she got tired, but Dad
Uh-huh.
used to say at night, now he used to entertain us a lot, play games with us when he'd come in from milking or something, and you sew, you can sew
Uh-huh.
then, you know,
Oh,
so.
that was thoughtful. I could imagine he'd had a hard day too.
Yeah,
What would he do to entertain you?
oh, we play caroms, didn't
Yeah.
we? And then we played checkers, caroms we used to play, and then Dad taught us how to, he was a card player, he taught us to play setback and
Oh, yeah.
Pedro and some of those games.
Some of those corrupt.
Yeah, Mother never got into that.
Okay.
That's our brother Jay, your dad.
Mhm.
And I remember when he was young, of course he was a baby there. Somehow he got a hold of that picture. Can you see the tear in there?
Mhm.
And he tore it. Oh, about broke Mother's heart when he did that.
Oh boy, what a rat! He just hasn't changed, has he?
I don't know if he was mad about something or what happened, but I remember he tore that picture, and oh, my Mother felt terrible about it.
I'm gonna zoom in on the face of that rotten kid.
Chubby little rascal there, wasn't he?
Yeah.
He was the pride and joy. He was the first boy in that family.
Yeah. You can kind of tell, can't you? That's the way he was treated. And so this picture would have been taken at the same time as those.
I'm sure it was.
That one we were just looking at.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay, you were starting. You wait till I click the thing off, and then you start really talking. Okay, go ahead.
I don't remember any jealousy in our family. When Jay came along, when Carol came along, you know, some kids are jealous of. Now maybe Eve was jealous of me. I don't know, but she was such a sweet thing. She didn't show it. But I can't remember ever having
No.
any jealousy in the family at all.
No.
We just kind of
That's good.
we're accepting, I guess.
What about like in the community and at school? Did the kids quarrel and so on, just like they do, or do you think at that time kids seemed to get along?
Oh yeah, there were fights, pretty
Oh.
bad fights in school sometimes.
Yeah, they were,
They were
Yeah.
normal kids.
Okay, Eve, what is this snapshot of?
That is Grandpa Van Zoren feeding the chickens. And with him is, this is Liam, his son Liam, and that is Verna Mings, who was Aunt Fanny's daughter. Aunt Fanny was Dad's sister.
Mm-hmm.
And when Aunt Fanny's husband, Ted Borst, died, I shouldn't say Verna Mains. She was Verna Borst
She was very worse.
at that time. Aunt Fanny's husband, Ted Borst, died from the flu during the war, 1918, I think it was. And Aunt Fanny and Verna and a younger girl, Edna, came and lived at the farm with Grandma and Grandpa for a couple years.
Mm-hmm. And then what did they do?
Then she remarried Henry Mims, and I don't know where they
They
moved
lived
to.
in Richmond for a while, didn't they? And then they moved to Morenci.
Oh, they lived different places before.
Metamora, didn't they live, I don't remember, I don't know.
I don't know where they lived. Morenci, Matamora.
Okay, Eve, who are these lovely children?
That-
This is Leon, and that's me, Eva.
Mm-hmm.
And it looks like we got flowers in our hands. It looks like we might have been picking clover.
Oh, yeah.
And somebody decorated our hats with the same flowers that we're holding in our hands over here.
Uh-huh.
And it probably was Grandma Van Zorn, Leon's mother, who did that, because she paid a lot of attention to us kids.
Mm-hmm. Okay, Eve, what is this?
This is a field that's east from our farm. That's the farm in the background, the house and the barn.
Mm-hmm.
And this is either wheat or oats.
Mm-hmm.
After the binder went through, the binder would put it in shocks, and Dad and I suppose a hired man would put it I think they put about 6 of them together to build kind of a tent like.
Mm-hmm.
And then eventually they'd go through with a horse and a wagon and put them all on, and then they'd take them to the barn and build them into a stack.
Mm-hmm.
And the stack is coming up next.
Okay. And those are the two barns and the big house,
Yeah,
and we don't see the little house there,
no.
do
You
we?
can see the windmill back there,
Oh, yeah.
40
Uh-huh.
feet high.
Oh, how do you remember that?
I've always measured everything by the windmill was 40 feet. And I always measured everything by the windmill.
I see, compared it. Now, you mentioned the hired man. Who would that typically be? You
I had a
remember at all?
couple, yeah, we had a couple hired men. There was, at one time it was John Hauskamp.
Uh-huh. Okay.
He came,
What was so funny about John?
he came from Bentheim. He was a bachelor. He and his brother and mother lived together, and they had loads and loads of money.
Oh,
He
really?
was a very good worker, and he got to be a very good friend of Dad, and whenever Dad needed money, he'd go to John Hauskamp and borrow money.
My tuition to go to Ferris came from John Hackelskamp.
Did it really?
Dad went there, and John went out to the barn. He had it hidden in the barn someplace, never put it in the bank, and came out with, I think I needed $150.
Uh-huh.
It was, I had a scholarship for half of no, maybe it was 75, because I had a scholarship for half of my tuition, I think.
Uh-huh.
And it was, I think at that time it was $50 a term, and there were 3 terms. Anyway, Dad borrowed. Then, when Jay went to college, med school, Dad borrowed, I think, $2,000.
You got John to go back out to the barn?
I guess, borrowed money for Dad, or for your dad, for Jay, to go to med school from John Hopkins.
Yeah. And then afterwards, there were a couple of other hired men who, one of them I remember, that was a Henry Glass.
Yeah, they liked him.
Yeah, he
Mother
was
always-
nice,
yeah.
yeah.
Mother always thought he was real
Yeah.
nice. He used to kid, a lot. Then he had to stay at our house, sleep there, and Mother had to fix all his meals.
Oh, had an extra room for a bed or someplace
Yeah,
for
we
him?
did that upstairs. You and I had the one room, and that was before Jay's time, I guess.
I guess so,
And he
yeah.
had the other bedroom upstairs.
Now, going back to this previous fella, John, I can't put it together that he would be so rich that he's the money lender and then he's the hired hand.
Well, he was a hired hand first, but he and his brother had a farm too, and then they farmed together after that, didn't they?
Was it because he was young? He was a young,
I suppose
I
so.
like
guess so.
a kid or something that he would be hired? You just don't picture a farmer hiring a rich guy for his hired
No,
hand.
he didn't have money at that time.
Not at that
probably,
time.
When he worked for Dad. But, see, by the time I was through, I don't remember him.
Uh-huh.
By the time I was through high school, he had been on a farm he and his brother had worked the farm together, you know, for a long time. Neither one of them married. They probably never spent one red cent.
Uh-huh.
Everything got socked away.
Yeah.
I don't know, but he had money.
Okay. Frugal.
Yeah, certainly was. Very. For
Okay, and
How
then
about
you
her?
mentioned this one was coming up, Eve.
Cut it off first a minute.
Okay, let's give this one another try.
Okay, this is after they had the bundles all on the wagon and they went back to the farm. Here's the wagon, somebody standing on the wagon, they would have a pitchfork
Mhm.
and pitch the bundles on a big stack, and they'd work that around and round and round and smaller toward the top. I suppose one of those is Dad
Mhm.
on the top, and maybe one of the hired men, I don't know for sure.
Mhm.
And here on the little wagon, watching, that's Leon, and I think that's me.
Now, do you think that stack there is really the way they would do it, or are they showing off for the picture?
No, that's
They
really,
really made them that big?
oh yeah,
It almost seems impossible to get the pile that high. You know, one guy on the ground and got it up so high, and another guy would be halfway up the stack or something?
Probably reach down and get hold of it.
Jeez.
yeah, you can see here, see he's pitching
Yeah.
one up to
Oh,
there,
yeah. And then they would reach down for
Yeah.
that.
and then they had a great big ladder that they'd set up against there to come down on. Now when they wanted to use it, they'd have to climb the ladder and pull the top ones, throw them down to use.
I don't envy the horses either. That must have been a heavy wagon load.
Yeah, well, they had big horses.
Okay, where is this scene?
This must be the front yard, I think, by Grandma and Grandpa's house.
Yeah, 'cause that's the Bartlett pear tree, and those are the, that had to be a fence across the way, doesn't it?
Want me to stop a minute, or do you want to take over here, Ellen? Okay.
I'm almost sure that's the front yard,
Uh-huh.
'cause those trees are where in the front, and that was that Bartlett pear. So
Uh-huh.
that fence had to be, the Hope's farm was over here, across the road from ours, and I think that fence was their fence, probably.
What did you call that firm?
The Hopes.
Oh. Uh-huh.
They were neighbors,
Okay.
and their field was right across
Uh-huh.
from our farm.
Oh, yeah.
And that fence had to be on their property, I
Oh, I
would
see.
say.
Across the road.
Mm-hmm. I think so.
Looks like a rail fence.
Yeah, it does.
Do you recall that that's what a lot of the fences were, as opposed to wire fences that are mostly around the farm fields now?
Well, I think a lot of the farms had a wire fence around them on our farm.
Uh-huh.
I don't really remember that, but it
Mm-hmm.
apparently was there.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So who have we got
And
here?
now that's Uncle John Van Zoren,
Mhm.
Dad's brother.
Oh, yeah.
That's Uncle John Elzinga, brother-in-law.
Mm-hmm.
That's Grandma Van Zoren, our grandma, and Lee. That's Aunt Kella, and she was married to Uncle John Elzinga.
Mm-hmm.
And that must have been Aunt Lizzie,
Oh.
Uncle John's wife.
Mm-hmm. And they're sitting out in the
And
yard.
they're sitting out in the front yard, I would say.
That a kind of an activity that would occur on a holiday or a Sunday afternoon, or I'm sure they didn't spend all their days doing
No, they sure did. That might, well, Sunday afternoon though, they went
that. Or
went
church
to
again,
church. They went to church in the morning and the afternoon, unless it was later in the afternoon after they got home from church and Sunday school.
Huh? Mm-hmm.
Everybody's all dressed up
Mm-hmm.
like they, it might have been later on a Sunday afternoon.
Mm-hmm. Okay. What is
Okay, this is taken on the farm again, and that was our house, the little house.
Mhm.
This was the living room right here, and that was Eve and my bedroom, right up there, right
Okay.
above the living room.
Mm-hmm.
That's Lee. That's Eve. That's Verna, our cousin Verna, who lived with Grandpa and Grandma for a while.
Mm-hmm.
I'm pretty sure that's me,
Mm-hmm.
Ellen. And I think that's Edna, Verna's sister. She and Eve were just about the same age.
Mm-hmm.
And we just had the old wagon there and we're playing with it,
Yeah.
apparently.
What type of wagon is that?
Well, it's not a buggy type, but it certainly isn't a wagon you could put much in. I
No.
really don't know.
Huh.
I have no. It's just got just a small box on it.
Yeah.
Um,
I don't know what that would be used for, eh?
you got me.
Okay. Gotcha. Okay, who are these
Okay,
little jokers?
Okay, that's Lee again,
Mm-hmm.
and that is Harold Leetsma.
Mhm.
Grandma, our Grandma Van Zoren, that was Grandpa's second wife, was a Leetsma,
Oh, yeah.
and she had a brother, Peter, and Harold was their son. And he used to love to come out to the farm. He'd come out to the farm for a few weeks in the summertime.
Uh-huh.
And he'd laugh and he giggled.
Oh.
No matter what happened,
Oh.
you could hear Harold all over the place
You
laughing.
always tell where he was, huh?
Yeah, he used to irritate Grandpa sometimes.
Oh, enough laughter, huh?
Yeah, right.
Okay.
But he was really a fun person. He grew up to be a minister.
Huh.
He still was a jolly, wasn't he, Eve?
Yeah.
And
Huh.
in fact, he married Eve. He didn't marry Eve. He was a minister. He was a minister that married Eve and
I
Carl.
getcha. Okay.
I think he's out in California now, isn't he?
Yes,
Uh-huh.
yeah, he was with Crystal Cathedral
Yeah,
for quite a while.
Yeah.
Huh. And did he live in town that he would come out to the
He
farm?
lived in Grand Rapids.
Oh, in
His
Grand
father
Rapids,
was a
yeah.
banker. He was
Oh.
the president of the bank, I think, wasn't he? He had a good job in the bank anyway.
Hmm.
You know, we highly respect. He had a good sense of humor too. Uncle Peter did.
Yeah?
Yeah, he was a very nice person. Yeah.
Okay, where do you guess we are here?
Okay, this is on the farm,
Hmm.
and that was west of our house, a rail fence that separated the pasture, I think, from our yard,
Yeah.
maybe.
Where the big orchard was.
Where the big orchard was, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And that's Lee, and that's Gene Osterhaven,
Uh-huh.
Aunt Maddie's son, Gene, our cousin.
He used to come in the summer and visit
Oh, yeah,
too.
he used,
Uh-huh.
and Aunt Maddie and and Gene used to all come.
Yeah,
And I remember Esther was playing the violin at the time, and boy, that violin had to come along, and Esther had to practice, and
Oh, yeah.
Aunt Maddie played the piano, and Esther had to practice the violin.
yeah, and Eugene had to practice his trumpet.
Right, he had a trumpet, and it wasn't vacation, they had
No.
poor grandma
It wasn't vacation for her either with all that
had
so-called
to have all that going on in the house.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, 'cause they always slept at Grandma's house.
Yeah,
Oh.
oh yeah, there was much more room there. Well, that was Aunt Maddie's, well, it was her home to a
Sure.
certain extent, yeah. That had a big upstairs, and
Uh-huh. They came from Grand Rapids?
they came from Grand Rapids, that's where they lived.
This is their country vacation.
Somehow, everybody thought if they came to the farm, you know, the farm was big, it didn't make any extra work for anybody.
Didn't seem to you that way?
No, the farm was a busy place, believe me. You
Oh,
know,
one day-
gardens and canning and,
Yeah, Esther liked everything in the farm, only she wouldn't drink milk. Because she didn't like milk out of a cow's handbag.
Out of cow's handbag?
She thought milk came out of a bottle.
Yeah.
That's where it should come from.
You're right.
Yeah, yeah. A little too realistic, I guess.
Oops, getting top heavy. No, that's Jean there again, Lee and Grandpa.
That's kind of a cute one. Let's see, should we move the whole operation over a little bit in order to not be falling off the side?
Maybe.
I think I'll go up and start organizing things a little bit.
Okay, you wanna get the coffee going and what have you? Yeah, well, I don't think we got a whole lot more to go here probably.
Oh, we're just getting started,
Oh,
Ellen. I'm gonna
really?
keep you
Oh,
going
don't
on
wanna-
this.
You don't wanna eat, huh?
Well, I guess it's not that important to keep going.
Grandpa's bark was always worse than his bite, really.
Oh yeah. It wasn't really quite that bad.
Well, we got so we didn't pay much attention. Oh, now that's even starting school. Do you want those? That's
Where's that?
Eve and Lee, that's their first day of school.
Oh. Well, it's kind of hard to see though.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, see, and this is them as they're older.
Uh-huh. Yeah, they're kind of fuzzy. Okay, we did this already with Eve, and then I screwed it all up. So why don't you tell once more who this fella is?
Well, here we have Gerrit Jan van Zoeren, who would be my great-grandfather, who came to this country as a young man with his father and his brothers and one sister, and homesteaded in Friesland, about a quarter mile east of Friesland Corners.
Notice he looks very pleasant in this picture as compared
He looks
to-
like all the Van Zorns.
Oh, really? You think
Right,
they're all such
all
pleasant?
pleasant people.
I hadn't noticed that. Okay. You don't know where that picture is, do you?
No, I don't know where the picture was taken,
Okay.
but I think it was taken by this person here whose shadow shows.
Oh, well, that's a clue. Okay, and who would this be?
This picture was taken on the farm in Friesland, and this would be my mother, Dora, and Leon, my uncle, who was really more like an older brother than an uncle, but technically he was an uncle, and then my sister Ellen, my sister Eve, and myself, and here's our dog Jip,
And did you say where this was?
on the farm in Friesland.
In the yard there?
Yeah, next to the plum tree.
Okay. Okay.
This stamp again is of the farm in Friesland. You see the barn in the background and the corn crib, and the horse and buggy, and in the buggy my father, George Van Zorn, all spiffied up with his derby hat, and he always wore a bow tie, and next to him his sister, my Aunt Calla Elzinga.
Okay.
And here we have two brothers. My grandfather, J. Van Zorn, along with his brother, older brother as I recall, named Marinus, and my grandmother, Elizabeth Van Zorn, along with Marine's wife, whose name was Ginny, who would have been Ginny Rankins before she married a Van Zorn. She, incidentally, was a sister of my grandfather's first wife.
Huh.
In other words, the two brothers married sisters.
Uh-huh. And Marinus was the one who ended up with the original fund.
Yes, the homestead, yes.
Okay.
And this stern-looking man in a World War I uniform would be what was considered the black sheep of my mother's family, her oldest brother, whose name was Casey Shermer. He never married. He ran the local pool hall in Zealand. He didn't go to church, which was quite something at that time. Most people did. And he always looked very stern, and I was always scared of him.
Okay.
This fine, clean-cut pair of men would be my father, George Van Zorn, and me, J. Van Zorn. The picture taken in front of my grandfather's house on the farm in Friesland.
When do you figure this is, do you know?
I figure that would have been taken in about 1942.
When you were what?
Probably 18.
Mm-hmm. Maybe going off to school or something?
Yeah, or just graduating from high school.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
This would be a picture taken on the occasion when my sister Carol, upon graduating or shortly after graduating from college, was about to leave for Japan, where she was going to be teaching in an English school near Yokohama, as I recall. And this was sort of a family gathering, a goodbye send-off party. The picture is taken at the home of my Uncle John and Aunt Lizzie in Holland, Michigan. The year would be about 1954.
Okay.
Why don't we start with the people in front?
Okay.
My sister Carol, my mother, Dora, my grandmother,
Just a second. Okay, now show me your grandmother again.
my grandmother Elizabeth, and going back the other way, here's my father, George, and my grandfather, JGJ, Jacob Garrett John Van Zorn. First row.
Okay. Now where do you want to go?
This would be Carl Newman, my sister Eve's husband, my brother-in-law. Back of him is my Uncle John Osterhaven, who would have been a brother-in-law of my father. Maddie Osterhaven, John's wife, her son-in-law, Arnie Sonneveld. This person I'm not sure of, that's Esther Sonneveld.
It almost looks like your wife, that one. You just didn't know. But I guess it's
She's not here.
Okay.
Esther Sonneveld, don't know this person. I think this one's my Aunt Elsie, would be a sister of my mother. I think that's Eugene Osterhaven, would be Aunt Maddie's son. This is probably my Aunt Elsie Shermer, a younger sister of my mother. This is Margaret Osterhaven, wife of Eugene Osterhaven. My sister Eve. I'm running into problems now identifying these people. This is my Aunt Lizzie, Uncle John Van Zorn, the people at whose house this is going on. Don't know. I think this is Jeanette Stahl, a cousin. I think this is Bill Warner. I don't know where my sister Ellen is in here. I think I've named everybody I can. I think I did pretty good.
Tall gentleman came in to the museum and wanted to donate a jacket that he purchased up in Canada, in the Pacific side of Canada, when he was a seminary student from Western. It turned out that that was Reverend Osterhaven. And we were talking about things, and I was showing him some stuff in the museum, and he mentioned something about this Albers fellow. And I thought, well, we have something from Albers, and I think it's on exhibit. And what it was, I'm not supposed to touch anything without gloves. Once in a while, you'll see me do that. What it was a pipe. And it has a strange inscription. It says, Surabaya, Java. G. Albers, 1840. And it's a horn pipe made on Java in 1840. And we start talking about, well, that's one of my great-grandfathers? Great-great-grandfather. Here, Albers is his great-great-grandfather. And we had some other things. And he brought over the Van Zoren and the Albers genealogies, and I was looking at them. Well, it turns out, and I do have something I will pass around, kind of history of that particular family. Geert Albers had 3 wives. 2 he married in the Netherlands, and 1 he married here in Holland, Michigan. He had 2 sons by the first wife, and 2 daughters and a son by the second wife. Well, he decided to come to the United States, but he left his 2 oldest sons in the Netherlands, and they became, I guess at least one was a sea captain or something like that. So in his sojourns around the world, he picked up this souvenir pipe for his father in 1840. Well, that got me to thinking, and I started reading more in the history of the albums. And one thing I came across was a description. This is just the history and the description of the clock. I came across a description of a young man who lived over near Grand Rapids in 1850, and here we just pass these around. He lived in Grand Rapids in about 1850, and one nice, I guess it was a spring day, the family came to Holland, Michigan. And he thought he was going to a foreign country because it was so different than his kind of podunk life over there in Grand Rapids. So, because all these exotic foreigners were here, and then, he heard about the Dutch and their windmills and all kinds of things, and he really wanted to find this windmill, and there used to be one over on 7th Street in River. But he wrote a little journal, and in this journal, one of the references was to a clock in the clockmaker's shop. He said it was huge, and that the sun and the moon, here's the sun, and there's the moon, went around, and it also had a calendar. And he'd never seen a calendar clock before, and it was amazing that there was this calendar. And it does have a calendar. Right now it says Vrijdag Mai, and I can't say 23 in Dutch because my Dutch is back there. And then,
23.
that's it. And then 1850. So he was here, saw this clock, mentioned it because it was so unusual. This is the only single object that I've found so far referred to in a historical journal or any kind of writing that I can say this piece was on 8th Street in the Alvarez Clock Shop in 1850. And so for me it was very exciting to think about this clock. Well, we talked some more, and yes, there was a clock in the family, and it went to the driving side, and then they kind of lost track of it. And I wrote an article in the newspaper about this. I was wanting to find this particular clock for the sesquicentennial exhibit column, which will be next year. Out of the blue came a phone call from Connecticut. This woman had, her last name was, it was Mackenzie Hauser was the name, and that was Julia Dryden Hauser's son. Well, his widow said, I have this clock, and it's been in the family for years, and it used to be in Holland, Michigan. I have a portrait of Albers, and I have a trunk that one of his wives had, and I have a whole description of some kind of a trip, but it's in Dutch, so I have no idea what it is. I said, a clock, this is the clock I've been looking for, and it was totally, she had read the newspaper article, we had this phone call. So I was so excited about it that we were able to secure the purchase of it for the museum. And since then, I've been working diligently doing it together, as you can see here. There are some things I'm doing to it. I did clean the whole surface. I'll show you. You can pass these around. They're just colored copies. But when we got the clock, it was dark. It was very dark, and it looked real scratched. It was a letdown to open up the crate and to see this clock because it was in such, the finish looked terrible. And then I got to thinking, now there has to be some way to clean this. Usually varnishes, you can do something. Maybe we can send it to a conservator. So I did a little test scratch from a dentist friend. I got a dental pick. They're very handy. And I just scratched a little on the surface, and the varnish came off. It all came off. And so this is the kind of in-between shot of how this thing's getting. We'll send that way. There's one thing that I won't do is touch an oil painting because I think I'll ruin it. So we would like to have some of these paintings sent off to have them. And I also have, and this is courtesy of team. This is Garrett Albers, about 1865, here in Holland, Michigan. He was 70 years old, and this was his third wife. And her name is in that. And you can send those around too. Well, I want to assemble this whole thing for you and show you. I hope nothing pops off in the process. I spent all day yesterday gluing this together. The stayed home, and that was kind of nice. This panel was cracked in about 6 pieces. And so I clamped it and glued it and all that. And I finished getting all the finish off of this board, which was more difficult than the rest of them. When we did get the clock, I started looking at it, and it has a real nice inscription on that brass piece in the center of the bottom, which says, Kamak, door made by Geert Albers, to, which is from or in, at Nieuwe Pekela, Groningen. This family was from Groningen. And Nieuwe Pekela, I understand, is a small village that runs along a canal. And it's right next to Oude Pekela, which is Old Pekela. This is a new Pekela.
Those names are also on the tombstone at Friesland. Oude Pekela. Maybe some of you see them. Zoeren.
In the meantime, while I'm assembling this, if you're very careful, you can pass these around. Just don't try to bend them. Reverend Osterhaven came in with this painting, and it says, G. Albers, onder officier, battalion, Windheim, Verlag, van Hoeveerd in 1814. It was a battle in I think it's the Netherlands near Germany, during the Napoleonic Wars. And then with the clock came this painting, which says, G. Albers, Garde d'honneur van Kaiser Napoleon, 1813. He was in both Napoleon's army and the Duke of Wellington's army in Prussia. And he got captured by one. I might have my history a little screwy right now. I got to do a little more research. But he was captured by one, and that's why he has 2 different military uniforms. So if you're very careful, these are original. You can pass them around and then, hand them to me at the end. You've probably seen that before.
I was thinking, Joel, that you could have had Phil Miller help you do that gluing yesterday.
Probably could have done it better than I.
Why don't I just take a whole set?
There was one place that was a little warped, and when I took the clamps off this morning, it kind of popped off, so I quick clamped it back. Hopefully, nothing will happen. The panels, this one has a hunting scene. There's a man on horseback and a couple of dogs, and a stag over here, another dog, and some boats in the background. I don't know who painted the paintings or even those watercolors, but it could have been Geert Albers himself. Whoever did them didn't sign it.
cousins, and the rest are gone. And she's 10 years older than I am. She looks much younger, and I'm very old. I've been 80s. Excuse me. But she's very historically alive. It was on the Zoeren Historical Committee, whatever it is, in the museum, the library, and so forth. She just tells me that her father and Will Lawrence, who are the family too, both lived at the home of Nell Dryden, in whose house that clock was for many years. And that's where the 4 Becker children lived. for a long time, including mine that was here with us. And so they know that clock. I lived right across the street from Elm Drive on 13th Street when I was in college, but I never went in there. I guess maybe she didn't drink much for me or something like that, I don't know. She did for mine, it was mine is still saying some of her endearing way as ending now, you know. But I never saw that clock myself till now. I heard about it, saw pictures of it and everything, but anyway, Nell Dryden must have had a big heart because she did take different people. Seal's mother, Uncle Martha Haig, others, and so it's kind of a little interesting. It's good to know that she had all these folk live there while they went through the whole prep school or whole college.
Well, there's the clock, and I really haven't seen it together all kind of. It is certainly impressive. There are a couple of other things that I have to research. Fortunately, we have a couple of books on antiques in the Netherlands, and this one has a description of this kind of clock. It was called a Kroning, I can't even pronounce it, Kroning's start clock, which means tail clock, because the pendulum is long, like a tail. And it's also called a Burgermeister clock, because it has, it's different than the Frisian clocks. It has a double hood, they call it. And so most Frisian clocks end here. This one has this extra stuff with paintings on it. And the other thing it probably had on the top, which is kind of funny, are two heraldic angels in Atlas holding the world on one shoulder. This little picture here, they would have gilded carvings. There were finials on the top. They're right here, there, and there, but they're missing. I guess the last thing that I just want to talk about, we have a couple of other artifacts in the museum, and some of these we've had since 1937. Mr. Albert supposedly made this pistol. It's burl, elm or walnut or something, brass and steel, and it's a percussion. It's not a flintlock, it's a percussion pistol. And a knife that was supposedly made out of a sword. This is a hilt, bone hilt handle, and used in the Battle of Waterloo. And on the leather sheath it had GA 1812. And then the last thing is, which Reverend Osterhagen brought in, actually there are a couple more things, is a bayonet from France, and it's also from about 1812. And so this was Mr. Albert's bayonet that would show on the French picture, except the rifle was at the other side of the horse, and you wouldn't see it. And then the last thing, and I guess it's fitting if we go cradle to grave, this is supposedly his baby cat. And I just kind of discovered it in the collection. It's a little knitted baby cat. So with all the photographs, the family history, and all these things, we're planning on showing these all in the sesquicentennial exhibit. And this exhibit will center around families that came to this area, starting with the Dutch till the present. And this is a very interesting story. I just found a reference that he actually went back to the Netherlands and organized some more immigrants to come over here, and then came here, and his two daughters were living in New York at the time. They didn't want to come to the woods of Michigan. They wanted to live in New York. But they finally did come, and they found themselves husbands. So I guess that was good. And especially for you all, probably. And and then his son, the son came with him the first time he came to Michigan, and he left the son with some friends, his son Jan. And then he went back to the Netherlands, and the family eventually, I guess, reunited here in Holland. And so it's really an unusual story, but at the same time, it's an immigrant story, and it's the reason that you're here, it's the reason that I'm here, it's the reason that all of us are here. And I thank you very much for coming this evening. I'm so happy to be able to share this discovery, which there's no reason that it happened other than either fate or providence. whatever you believe. And I'm very pleased that we were able to get this and show it to people of Holland. You're welcome to partake of refreshments now, or also you can go and visit our gallery if you haven't been here. And
Some of us already know each other, some of us haven't met before at all. So maybe in our socialization year, we can get to know each other a little better. And before that, maybe somebody has some questions you'd like to ask. Maybe I can answer, maybe Joel can, or somebody, or maybe Steele can here. Bob? Was it a goal to make that clock run? Is it possible to make that clock run?
someone did a real number on it, and you should see the inside. The gong is missing. The second hand is missing. They said that Mrs. Hauser sent it to a Danish clock repairer, and he fixed it. I'm supposed to go to the Netherlands this fall, and I would like to research the clock museums and see if there's any way that we could work on that some more. We do have a Frisian clock that's very similar to this in our collection now. We have 3 of them, and 2 of them are in very bad condition, so we do have some spare parts potentially. And it's possible. I just don't know, because if you look at the works, I'm not even sure how this mechanism went around. And there was another mechanism, and there's a little hole on the side. They said that if you wanted to know what time it was at night, there was a cord that came out the side of the clock. You pulled on the cord and it would strike. And so that was an unusual thing for this clock, and I don't know if that mechanism is even still in there.
I remember the pistol as being in the bottom drawer of Grandpa's kasha in recent Grandpa Gary Johnson's sword. Leon and I pull it out once in a while, and I even got some powder once, and at Leon's suggestion, I'm sure. And a little percussion caps and Zoeren, we were going to shoot it, and then we didn't dare at the last moment. But, I remember that pistol and some of the other things.
Probably would have exploded.
There was a musket that I remember too. I don't know whatever happened to that. I saw the bugle of Garrett Albers when he served as an orderly of Napoleon just yesterday in Zoeren. It's not this long. Somebody has it there, and kind of interested in keeping it for a while, I guess. But he used that. He was a bugler during the Napoleonic campaigns.
Where is the trunk that we were?
There's a trunk back in the, let's see, I'd say the stacks in the library. There's a trunk too that his wife had. That
Yeah.
leather covered trunk?
Yeah, that one didn't come over on the boat. That's an American trunk. It was probably used by that third wife.
Oh, I see. That didn't come over the boat.
No.
Seal has one that came over the boat, don't you? And she had to repair it at a small fortune.
Just $1,000.
Pardon?
Just $1,000.
1,000? And there was 3. No. Seal had that repaired. It cost her $1,000 to have it fixed up. She got that. That's a beautiful trunk.
Well, I will say if anyone has anything they'd like to loan for this exhibit, we do take loans for a period of time and then we return them. So I'm not standing here asking, give me more Albert stuff, because we really have some beautiful things, and I think that family heirlooms in the family are equally as important as something in a museum. So if anyone would consider a loan, that would be something that we would look at.
Any other questions at all about family history or anything like that?
I'm just curious, do we know how many people own this clock through the years?
How many people
different-
own it?
It's in this this little
Okay.
thing I wrote.
Okay.
There's a rundown, and it says in there somewhere that a ne'er-do-well grandson got it and pawned it. I don't know. There was one family history that was way off. It said the family lived in Amsterdam, and they did this and they did that, and then it talked about this grandson. And then there was another family history that was really on the nose, accuracy-wise. But it said Gesine Albers Koning died in 1907, and after she died, the clock was given to an unappreciative young blade of a grandson who pawned it for $31. However, the family found the clock and returned it to Nellie Coney Dryden, and then to Julia Dryden House. So that's the story, at least. It's a pretty good story. This clock has seen an awful lot, and I don't think I mentioned it's in here, but Holland burned in 1871. It was very tragic, and people were scurrying around town trying to save their possessions. And this clock got buried in a sandhill somewhere. And after the fire was over, they couldn't find their clock because there were no markers. They all burned. And so it said it took a couple of weeks for them to actually find the clock again. So it's been through a lot. It's really
See, Nell Dryden's house was on the north side of 13th Street, 2 doors east of Pine, right by Third Church, which did not burn. And Nell Dryden's house didn't burn either. A few houses around there were spared with the fire. And the clock was in there at that time. It was before Nell Dryden's time, but anyway, no, maybe it wasn't. I'm not sure. I knew her in the 30s, and lived across from her, as I say. And I was told in the 20s and 30s that she had that clock. She was a cousin of Grandpa Zoeren, my grandfather, Jacob Gary John, and a cousin of Aunt Gertie then, the grandmother, some of you folks here, and I knew that Nell Dryden had it. I heard that from also Gary John Zoeren, my mother's oldest brother. He knew that Nell Dryden had it.
And an interesting bit of information. The Hackley Library in Muskegon has a book which lists all of the passengers which came over on Dutch ships during the mid-1800s. And it does list the family of Jacob, Garrett, John, Van Dora, or lists him. His wife, of course, had died in the Netherlands. And there were the 4 sons and the 1 daughter, Gertrude, who was, of course, Dora. And they listed them as male or female. Unfortunately, she got listed as a male.
But let's see, maybe, did it list 4 sons?
Well, I think, see, 1 stayed in Buffalo.
That's right, yeah, I knew that.
Yeah. Well,
Okay.
I'm not sure about the number, but they're missing one.
I just wondered. Okay, good. Let's see. Any other comments, suggestions? I read and then I translated from Dutch the funeral sermon of Gary Elder's daughter, who was my great-grandmother, and the great-grandmother of most of us here, Fanny Elders, who married Gary John Van Zoeren. She married Gary John Van Zoeren, the father of most of our grandparents here. And it was I think she died in 1906, when I'm mistaken. I just saw that sermon the other day. I translated that many years ago from John. It's a beautiful sermon. She must have been a very, very fine woman, very fine Christian woman. She was our great-grandmother, your grandmother. She died in 1894. Yes, okay. Uncle John died in 1906. John over there. 1894. Seal correction. Thank you.
There's a question back here.
Pardon?
I was wondering where the print of the soldier with the red uniform, where did that come from?
This, the one in the French River Vista?
Yes.
Let's see. I had it for a while. I got involved with John. Then when my wife and I went to Australia, I thought, whenever something happens to me flying over there. So I gave that and the bayonet to Seal, who had it. 2 or 3 years ago, I retrieved it from her for the museum here.
There must have been more than one of those prints because Aunt Fanny Brinkman always had a picture of that picture above her fireplace.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, well, about 40 or 50 years ago, Uncle John had a number of prints made, and I had some. And then he distributed them to relatives. And I lived with a partner when I was in seminary 2 years ago, and I remember he was much involved in all this at that time. So he made many prints. We had a half a dozen ourselves.
I see.
But that's the original. That's the original there. That's a painting. He was non-commissioned officer for the board. Don?
Is that picture
kept in the museum now?
Yeah, it's in the museum, the picture of it.
Yeah, we're going to have both of them framed. We have a couple of,
I remember seeing it probably around 1918 in the home of Herman, my grandfather Herman, on the wall. And I haven't seen it since.
Maybe it moved around. I think that as I understand it, folks, the family, at least much of the family, is very close. Because my mother would haul me around to your grandparents' house. So I remember Uncle Herman and Aunt Bertie, they were great aunt and uncle. And I just mentioned that to Bob the other day. He's living in their old home, the old homestead there. And my mother made sure that I saw Uncle Henry and Dora and other men and buddies and others here and there. And so I can understand how they might have moved some of this stuff around a little bit. Some of these folk were very strongly family conscious. I know they talk about the Zoeren clan or the elders, this or that, you know. In fact, just the other day, when we saw Nella, who's now 98, Nella Eichmann, a sister of Cecile here, she spoke to us, to my wife, me, about the Zoeren blood. That's the exact connection. It reminded me of an old Dutch ballad, which is really chauvinistic to the 10th degree. It says in English, he who has Dutch blood flowing in his veins, free from foreign particles. That's the first time. It's almost the same book. Wiens Nederlandse bloed door zijn aderen vloeit van vreemde smetten vrij. It's nonsense. Because 100,000 Frenchmen moved into the Netherlands during the age of persecution. I know that history. Believe me. And many, many others with them. Margaret, my wife's got a Hungarian background. Over 3,000 Hungarian students studied theology in the Netherlands, over 1,200 in Friesland during the course of 150 years because they liked that type of experiential theology, as it was called over there. They liked the theologians and so on. Many of those guys didn't go back home, they stayed there. And some others took Dutch wives back to Hungary, so. And many, many Portuguese Jews came into the Netherlands. Many of them were Christianized and married into the Dutch population. So it's a mixture. There's no more mixed people in Europe than the Dutch people.
here Albert was born at that time. Born in Rostock at that time. So,
He's German. You're all German. In fact, folks, the 4 great Dutch reformers all spoke French. When the Reformed Church was started in the Netherlands, I give you their names and so forth. They all spoke French. So, and they were all really Frenchmen they were also from the southern part of the Netherlands, you know, but they were Dutchmen too. So, Wiens Nederlandse bloed was er aan in vlucht en vreemde stem vrij, nonsense. There is no such thing. Any other question? Back to something serious. Steve?
I was just wondering about those, since we're talking about the paintings, whether you or perhaps Joel have ever seen other similar paintings. I guess what I'm wondering is whether that is a genre, and perhaps at that moment in history it was a convention or expected that someone who served in the army would have a picture like that made of himself.
I haven't seen any other here, but I think you're right. I've seen others in auction catalogs that were full military dress, and it was just, you were proud of your service, and it's just like Desert Storm, have a photo taken in your fatigues. It's the same pride in military service. But I think Napoleonic Wars probably produced an awful lot of these are the only ones that I've seen, and as far as I know, this is about the earliest portrait of anyone, an immigrant to Holland, Michigan. I have seen no other of the immigrants themselves. I've seen a couple of parents. So that was very unusual.
Any other question or comment? To fortify what I said a little while ago, let me just say that the first Sunday that there was a service held in a Reformed church in New York City, that's the beginning of the Reformed Church in America, It was held in Dutch in the morning and French in the afternoon. And
Does anybody think that it's possible that he actually painted his own portrait and could conceivably have painted these panels? Would anyone know anything at all about any particular artistic?
Do you have a strain of articism in the channel?
Because we think the styles look rather similar.
Oh, the panels
When
and
you
the
look at the
painting and so
panels
on.
and the portrait, and so we got thinking, well, if he made the clock, maybe he painted the panels.
Well, and it says made by Eric Albers all over. It's on the inside, it's down there at the bottom, it's signed up the front.
The clock was made in the Netherlands, isn't that right? And he
Yeah.
brought it over
Brought it
with him.
any other questions at all?
We can't find any.
We'll end this formal part of our meeting and have some refreshments and talk, mix around. I wish that all of you knew each other as well as I know just about everybody here. I think I know everybody here quite well. But get to know each other perhaps. Mike?
I think you should be thanked for all you've done to preserve this.
Yeah, if it weren't for Gene coming in, I would know nothing, because he provided all the family histories and leads to where to find things, and brought in a couple of really nice artifacts, so yeah, and we tried to do all together.
Please feel free to tour the museum, socialize with one another, have some refreshments, and just treat this as your home for tonight.
Thank you. Thank you folks very much.
Zoeren kind of plain, ordinary, ugly.
Van Zoeren Hall.
You know what that is filled with Van Zoeren? It's just
In which we got several letters, by the way. Quite a few letters. If somebody wants some, I'll send you a copy. But we used to say, how many rebels did you kill, you know? He'd say, 25, 25. Oh, 25. But anyway, this was his third wife. Two in the Netherlands, they died, you know, and then he married this one here. She was born in 1804, it says. Yeah, born, but that's in English too. He was one of these who, like Grandpa Van Zoeren, who wanted to learn English, and Van Raalte here too. You know, there was a big controversy here about over the speed of Americanization, and I believe myself, having studied this thing for our denomination and written it up, that the fundamental reason for the split between Reformed Christian Reformed churches was the speed of Americanization. I'm convinced of that.
Really?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, terrific. I translated the Friesland Consistory Minutes, you know, for the Consistory.
Yeah.
It's 5 books. You read it in there too. There was so much controversy in Friesland, you know, and Graafschap, Holland, Zeeland, but the most interesting controversy, I think, in Friesland.
Margaret, get over here too.
Oh,
Both of you.
what did we sing hymns?
Get close.
See, because in Europe they had to sing a hymn.
Why should I be sure?
Because of the Constitution of 1816.
You're not Dutch blood.
Who should I
And
choose?
so they got against hymn singing. And what they call choruses, choir music. They thought the whole people
Are you related to you? No.
I'll show you this on this side too. Look what it says here, folks.
Mary Jo. What? Mary Jo.
Look what it says here.
Good.
Wait. Oh, see,
We have to translate too, possible. So.
in memory of Gerrit Albers, born 1790 at Wilsum, the Graafschap Bentheim, see, Hanover was part of Germany. But at that time, Bentheim was part of the Netherlands at that particular time. Later it was part of Germany because the Netherlands hated the border disputes. They were kind of afraid of Germany. And here, he died in 1871 at Holland, Michigan. And then it says the muffled drums, see, there's a little poem there about the drums, the bugle and all that stuff.
Oh, yeah.
I can hardly read it now, but yeah.
Well, this is easy to find right by the street here.
Yeah.
So this is
Very
Elvis and
easy.
this is his wife.
Yeah, that's Elbers and his wife are buried here. Yep.
One side is
13,
18,
No, she thought this was
Albers and this is his wife on that side.
Yeah,
Well, I don't know. I don't know where they're lying, but
1892.
they're both buried here.
but I mean the printing is Elbers and then his wife's.
Yeah. Yeah. Elida Moiken.
Yeah.
Yeah.
anything on the other side.
No, I don't think so. But I checked to see if this could be redone, you know, and so you could see it more plainly.
Yeah.
But they said this kind of a stone is very, you can hardly make them look good. You have to have a different kind of stone, they said. Yeah.
Now, was J.G. Van Dorn, was he a clerk in the Friesland Consistory?
Oh, he was, yeah.
Was that
yes, he
handwriting
was.
is absolutely
He was
perfect.
Yeah, he was a clerk until, yeah. And he changed into English in 1925. I translated all that. But he was one of those who believed in that we have to be Americans, you know. He knew Dutch, of course.
But
Yeah.
perfect handwriting, wasn't it?
I don't know, no, not that good.
I
No,
thought it
that
was.
was somebody else.
With a
That was
little bit
somebody
of
else, yeah.
flair.
Yeah.
That was Dupree, I think, who was clerk of the consistory before him.
Because I remember going through those books and
Yeah, yeah.
I couldn't write
Oh,
half
no,
that good.
Dupree
It
wrote
was-
beautifully, yeah. But in the first years, the clerk of the consistory had to write the minutes in Dutch because Frisian was what they used to call unrespectable. Oneerbiedig in Dutch, oneerbiedig, unrespectable. So they had to write in Dutch. And it's terrible. It's a mixture of Dutch and Frisian. And he didn't know Dutch too well, and a little American, you know. So I worked at that for a long time, and I showed one paragraph to two of our students in the seminary about 15 years ago, who were both from the Netherlands, both Dutchmen, and one of them looked at it for about 5 minutes. He said, "I cannot read this. This isn't Dutch." It was a mixture.
Oh, yeah.
You know. Yeah, it was something.
But then when they changed over, that was terrible.
Oh yeah, here. At first, you know, there were so many discipline cases. At first, when they disciplined somebody, if somebody be suspended, it was the Dutch verb is geskortst. 25 years later, it was gesuspendeerd. Gesuspendeerd, you know, the Dutch prefix and suffix, and the English verb. Oh boy. Yeah.
That's different.
Yeah. But you catch on to that after a while. Anybody does, you know, the translator. Yeah.
Looks like something might be inside there.
Yeah.
Because of this.
Knock it off. Oh, yeah.
Probably sealed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
I'll tell you, it'd be fun to look into it, wouldn't it?
It
Could be diamonds?
I started
Could be a scroll.
Florida, I started writing some memoirs, just my own memory and that type of thing, because some people have said, a little while you're going to be gone, and somebody will want to know some of this stuff, you know, because I heard so much from my grandpa. And Uncle John too, and Jay heard a lot from Uncle John too. He could talk a lot, you know. He also had a sharp memory. He had a sharp memory.
On the north
So
side.
in Florida, I wrote up some stuff, and I gave Eve 2 copies about
Look at that sometime.
and I told Eve to read it very sharply and critically. I don't want to, you know, write hagiography or something like that, but I want to say, and just a little bit about this stuff.
Okay,
Lost my voice.
viewers need to understand we just went through this and Tom did a little boo-boo and none of it got recorded, so poor Eve is going to do a rerun here. And she's sitting by a chair that she's going to tell about. What is that, Eve?
This chair belonged to my great-grandfather, and they had 4 chairs like this, plus a love seat. And he passed it on to his 5 children, 1 piece to each children. My grandfather got this chair, and then it was passed down to me. It did originally have a horsehair upholstery, and I made this needlepoint for it.
I don't know anything about needlepoint, but was that a fairly time-consuming thing to do?
Yes, very.
It certainly is beautiful. So this was your great-grandparents, and you don't know how they used it in their home?
No, I don't
Whether
know.
it was the dining room, it looks like a dining room chair, doesn't it? Or would it was it too plushly, of course you say that's different upholstery than it had.
Yeah.
Does that look to you like a dining room chair?
I think it was more or less like an occasional chair. They used to have living rooms and parlors.
Mm-hmm.
I think this would have been parlor furniture,
Mm-hmm.
along with the love seat.
Mm-hmm. Do you remember parlors in some of the homes when you were young?
Now, Grandma's house on the farm had a living room,
Uh-huh.
and then off to the left they had the parlor.
Uh-huh.
Do you remember that? Where she had her piano and
Uh-huh. And what was the difference in use between the living room and the parlor?
I think the parlor was reserved for company, when they had company.
So the living room was not all that formal, the family would just casually use it?
Yes.
And the parlor was kept special?
Mm-hmm.
Uh-huh. And then this chair was passed on to your grandparents, and how did they have it? How did they use it?
Well, that's where I think that they just put it upstairs in a bedroom, as just an occasional chair in a bedroom.
Mm-hmm. And you mentioned that there was a love seat also. What
Yes.
became of that?
I don't know which member of the family got the love seat.
If somebody got it and they're not talking about it too much.
That's right.
Uh-huh. Let's see. Oh, and when you were talking before, you mentioned that you did this needlepoint in Sheboygan, Wisconsin.
Yes.
And you were telling that you had ended up going there for some reason. Could you run through that once more? And we'll hope the tape doesn't run out. It's threatening to. But
Well, that
go.
was in 1934 when I graduated from high school. It was during the Depression. And there weren't any jobs available here, so I went to visit my Aunt Calla, who was Dad's sister. And she asked me to stay because she was lonesome there. So I went to business school there and got employment, and that's where I met Carl. And we were married in 1943, and then in 45 we came back to Grand Rapids.
Uh-huh. And why was it you came back?
Because there weren't any jobs in the war industry in Sheboygan, and there were in Grand Rapids, so he came to Grand Rapids to get a job.
Uh-huh. And Steve, am I forgetting to ask anything that came up before? Here's Steve. He likes to criticize after these things get done. Anything else I need to ask?
You did it perfectly.
Ah,
Relatively.
revenge, finally. Okay, thank you, Eve.
Okay.